Hey everyone, how's it going? Forrest here, again with another installment of my complete analysis of all 389 Bach chorale harmonizations. Today we're going to be looking at Via Christenlut, which translates to We Christians May. All in all, this is a pretty interesting chorale. Medium difficult analysis. I think the form is pretty interesting as well. Have a really interesting second system. We'll talk about that when we get to it. That's when the analysis starts to get a little bit ambiguous, but we'll get there when we get there. So let's start the analysis. 2 sharps in the key signature. We start on B minor. We end on B major. I reckon we are in the key of B minor. We start off with 2 passing tones, one in the soprano and one in the tenor. And then we have another B minor triad, this time just with the voices rotated and the bass leapt up an octave. We then have F sharp, A sharp, and C sharp. That is a root position F sharp major chord with a passing 7th in the tenor. That's a 5 chord. And then we have a perfect authentic cadence on B minor to round out this very quick repeat. Okay, now we go into, it's actually important that we bear in mind for the form of this piece that this repeats twice, because the rest of the music kind of follows the same structure. So moving ahead to the next cadence, we have a half cadence in the key of B minor. We start off with a D major triad, D, A, F sharp, and F sharp. We also have a couple of passing tones in the inner voices, so we have a 3 chord here. Then we have A, C sharp, A, and E. That is a root position A major triad, which if this sounded like it was in the key of D major, which there might be an argument for there this section being in the key of D major, because this would be 1 going to 5, and then the progression continuing. But I don't really think there's enough. It still sounds largely in B minor, because immediately afterwards we get B minor, B, F sharp, and D, and then we cadence on 5, F sharp major, F sharp, A sharp, F sharp, and C. So right here, whether or not this is 3 and then, 3, 7, 1, that seems fine to me. Usually 7 wants to go to 3, but what I find is that Bach in his progressions, he isn't, it's not just a one-way progression. You know, if the cycle of fifths says 7 wants to go to 3, that voice leading could also take you back to 7, right? Because the voice leading would just mean the voices are going in the other direction, right? So there's like this transitive property to the chord progression. Okay, moving ahead, we have a long phrase here. It's actually 3 measures in length if we include the pickup. And it is a perfect authentic cadence in the key of B minor. So no modulations yet. The only chromaticism we have is the leading tone. So we have F sharp, we have another 5 chord again. And we know where 5 wants to go usually. It goes to 1 or a tonic functioning triad, B, F sharp, and D. It's a 1 chord. Passing tone in the tenor, B, D, F sharp, and B. There's another tonic triad, just the voices, or the tenor just goes up, and then we get a passing 7th in the bass. Then we have G, D, B, and E. That's E minor 7 over G, so that would be a 4 chord in first inversion. That kind of turns into 7, 5, 3 on the next and then we have A, C, A, and E, C sharp. So that would be our 7 chord in root position. That's where 4 wants to go. Passing tone in the bass again. Very active bass line in this measure. And then we have F sharp, D, A, and D. So 7 going to 3 again. And the more that I think about it, and more specifically it's a 3-6, but the more that I think about it, 7 going to 3, well, 7 wants to go to 3, but 3 wanting to go to, 7 wanting to go to 1 or 3, right? Because they're both tonic functioning chords and they share 2 notes in common. So it makes sense that one would want to go to the other, whether 1 or 3. Passing tone in the bass, D, D, A, and F. That is a same thing, it's a D major triad, but this time in root position. Passing tones in the alto and the bass. Then we have B, C sharp, and E. I reckon this B is an accented non-chord tone. It's this A sharp that's giving us the 7 chord in root position that we want. And then we have B, F sharp, and D. Root position B minor triad, which is where 7 diminished wants to go. F sharp, B, F sharp, and C. We know that Bach sometimes has this suspension scheme where he starts with the 4, then goes down to the 3. That's just a root position 5 chord. We marked the suspension. And then we resolve to a tonic triad. Okay, moving into the next cadence, we have half cadence. We cadence on F sharp major, so we're still in the key of B minor. And here we have another B minor chord. The voices just rotate, so no need to reanalyze. And here we have C sharp, E, B, and E. I reckon that this B is similar to this B right here, and really what we have is a 7-6 chord because that A sharp turns the quality of the triad to diminished. And then we have D, F sharp, B, and D. That is our first inversion tonic triad, passing tone in the bass. And then we have F sharp, A sharp. Remember the A sharp carries over, and C sharp, so 5. Good. Now the next cadence is probably the most interesting cadence in the entire chorale. I hear it as an imperfect authentic cadence in the key of A major, which is adjacent to B minor on the circle of fifths. So we're looking for a point in which we modulate from B minor to A major. And I reckon it happens in and around this G sharp because that's what turns the B minor scale into an A major scale, pitch collection wise, right? Because A major has 3 accidentals, or 3 sharps, and B minor has 2 sharps. I guess B minor technically also has 3 sharps, but one of them is artificial, right? Because it's the leading tone. It's not reflected in the key signature. So here we have D, F sharp, B, and F sharp. So this is a tonic triad in the key of B minor in first inversion with a passing 7th on the bass. And I think this is where we modulate, right? We don't have a lot of time. It's this right here is actually kind of mirroring what's happening in the form in the first 2 measures, or really the first complete measure. We have the repeat after the pickup, and here this is a repeat after a pickup, but because they're different harmonizations, there's not a repeat sign. So really what's happening here is that we're mirroring the form with a different harmony, even though the melody is a little different. Okay, so I think we've modulated to the key of A major. 1-6 is now 2-6 because B minor is no longer the tonic, it's the supertonic. And then we have E, B, G sharp, and E. That's our dominant triad, our E major in root position. We then have F sharp, A, and D. That is our 4-6 chord, because D major is our subdominant. And I know what you might be thinking, if we cadence on 1, wouldn't that be a plagal cadence, right? 4 going to 1? Well, if you look at this beat right here, all these passing tones, you know, Bach sometimes does this with 2 looking like it's going to go to the tonic, but no, on this and we have G sharp, E, B, and D. So we actually have a hidden or a brief 5-6-5 chord happening in between the subdominant and the tonic. Pretty nifty stuff. And that's why it sounded like imperfect authentic, because when I was looking at the page, I usually just look at the numbered beats. And I'm just like, oh, 4-1, that's a plagal cadence. No, it's an imperfect authentic cadence because that 5 chord is there. Because I heard it, I looked at the score, I'm like, no, that's a plagal cadence. I misheard it, but my ear was actually right. So yeah, trust your ears. Okay, moving on. This continues the interesting part of the chorale. To me, the way that the harmony sounds, because we have a bunch of G naturals, right? We have G natural here, but we also have G sharp. There's like kind of this sequencing going on. Da 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 da. going on in the voices. Da, da, da. Like there's this alternation between the bass and the alto, and there's like a little bit of sequencing going on as he ascends the scale. To me, this still sounds very much like A major, even with the G natural in there. So with that being said, the last cadence obviously is a perfect authentic cadence in the key of B minor, but where we modulate is somewhat nebulous. I hear it in and around here, where the A sharps get introduced, because in this section it just doesn't sound like B minor. I think trying to force the B minor label on it would be a little disingenuous, so we're going to continue to analyze it in the key of A major. So this right here looks like another A major triad, but we have this G natural here. So what does G natural do to this A major triad? I think it implies that this is no longer tonic. I think that this is now 5/4, because remember the tonic also is the dominant of the subdominant, but you don't hear it that way until you add the dominant 7 to it, which is a chromatic tone, and that would be the G natural. So this is kind of implying 5/4. Even though 1 would also be a suitable analysis. But I think 5/4 is sort of a deeper level analysis because it's immediately followed by 4, D major, right? F sharp, A, and D. It's in first inversion. We have some passing tones. There's a little bit of imitation going on. And here we have B, D, F sharp, and B. That is our 2 chord in root position. Passing tones in the lower voices, and then we have G sharp, B, B, and E. That is our E major triad in first inversion, right? That's our dominant. Passing tone in the alto, and then we have, interesting, it's a deceptive progression, C sharp, E, G sharp, E. The more that I look at this, it kind of makes sense, because if this C sharp triad is a 3 chord, it looks like 1 going to 4, 2 going to 5, 3, where would 3 go if we're following that pattern? Well, 3 would want to go to 6, but instead of 3 going to 6, and 6 in the key of A major would be F sharp minor, it goes to F sharp major, and he uses that as a pivot chord to get to the key of B minor, and I think that that's really elegant and beautiful. So our pivot chord is right here on this A sharp. So I'll put 1 in parentheses down here, but this G natural changes the texture a little bit. It changes the trajectory, right? 1 does want to go to 4, but 1 wants to go to 4 because 1 is 4's dominant as well. There's different layers of relationship between them. There's a reason why fifths are such a natural course of progression between chords using, tonal practices. So here we have A sharp, E, C sharp, and F. That is an F sharp 7 chord over A sharp. So that would be 5, 6, 5 of what? B minor, right? So 2, 5, 6, 5 of 2, but this is our point in which we're modulating to the key of B minor. So we can just ditch that slash notation and just call this 5, 6, 5. And here it goes to B minor, right? Instead of F sharp minor, which would continue the A minor idea, it goes to F sharp major, and that's really cool. And that of course goes to 1, right? D, D, B, and F sharp. Not just 1, but 1, 6. And it's really interesting how in the bass, sorry for the loud motorcycle in the background, I live on a busy street, A sharp going to D. It's really interesting how Bach has this, that would be a diminished fourth, as opposed to it going to a root position triad. It's very expressive. It sort of prolongs the cadence, but it's kind of an awkward interval to sing based on what you see it as. You would just sing this like a minor third, a major third, but it looks like a fourth, so it's kind of interesting writing. So we have some non-chord tones also in the inner voices. G sharp, A, B. This is, G sharp, A sharp, B. I was about to say this is kind of interesting, but here we have G sharp, B, B, and E. Bach sometimes uses 4 major chords in first inversion. I think the version of the chords that we've seen so far have been 4, 6, 5. For the most part, we've seen them used in like a 7th chord context, in the chorales that we've looked at in the past, but here we're seeing one without without the 7 of the chord. We have some passing tones as well. A sharp, C sharp, B, and E. If this B is sort of like a suspension a little bit over the bass, it would be like a 9/8 suspension, but it never fully gets resolved. So usually what happens after this 4 chord is we kind of get like a 7 going on, but because this B never turns into the A sharp or never turns into a C sharp, we never really fully realize that 7 chord. So these are just passing tones, and they lightly imply a harmony, but we don't get the full harmony, so I won't analyze it. I'll just mention it. B, D, B, and D. Wait, is that right? B, D, B, and D. Yeah, so we have another one of these double root, double third chords. It's still in root position, passing tone in the tenor. And then we have F sharp, B, and C sharp. We know that this is just a big 5 chord with a suspension here that resolves on the next beat. This suspended doubled root that turns into a 7th on this beat. And then we have a cadence on B major because it's in minor, and we know Bach utilizes the Picardy third a lot, right? B, D sharp, F sharp, and B. And that's the analysis for today. It was a really cool chorale. You know, one of the things that's really definitive of Baroque music is the sequence, and it's not something that I've really looked for intentionally in Bach's music, but in the chorales, I can't say that I've noticed too much sequencing or deliberate imitation sometimes, but this sequencing right here is very deliberate. 1-4, 2-5, 3, not 6, but he tricks us. It's very deceptive in that way. Bach is very tricky and clever with the way that he utilizes his chords, and it's very evident that he had a strong relationship with the very modest tools that he had. Yeah, it was really cool. So sequence, imitation, interesting modulation structure as well. You know, B minor and A major. It's interesting when you modulate to the flat 7 in a minor key. Usually expect to go to the relative major, which he does flirt with, you know, 3 going to 7 here, and, you know, lots of 3 and 7 in the first phrase especially, or the first system. Maybe the first section, right? Because the first section would be going up until this half cadence, and the second section is the second system. They actually formatted very nicely visually to represent that's where the piece is delineated sectionally. But all in all, yeah, it's an interesting modulation structure. The chords were fairly easy to analyze, and it was a delight to analyze. I'm going to tuck this one into my back pocket to show sort of like a sequential structure going on in the harmony. So that's it. I'm really excited for tomorrow's analysis as well. I was peeping the chorale, and I'm excited to upload the video when I get to actually sit down and analyze it. But thank you for watching the video. Thank you for your continued support of the channel, and I hope you take care.